Test 1, 2, test. And you might hit me.
Hot. I see it. It's.
I'll tell him.
Yeah, are you getting What number is this? Oh, yeah.
So I'm just looking at your notes. 'Cause
Okay.
I'm assuming you can be talking about these.
Yeah.
And I'd love to
I'm
think-
serving as the moderator.
And I would love to spell your name right.
Okay. All right, we're going to get started here. Good evening and welcome to the Milwaukee County 2023 Budget Town Hall. My name is Shanika Fitch and I am the Director of Community Relations. I will serve as your moderator this evening. This evening we will begin with introductory remarks by Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, and then the 2023 budget presentation presented by County Executive Crowley and Dan DeLira of the Office of Strategy, Budget, and Performance. From there, we'll hear from county residents with public comments and questions before we conclude. In an effort to be respectful of everyone's time and answer all questions, if you registered online for a question or a comment, you will receive an email addressing your question or comment directly from County Executive Crowley. We will have a few ground rules this evening for participation in the public comment portion. Each person that signed up to speak will have 2 minutes to make a comment and or ask a question. Speakers will receive a reminder with 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then a final notice when their time is up. Milwaukee County reserves the right to mute those that exceed their time. We begin tonight with County Executive David Crowley.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you all for really coming out for this budget town hall. Really appreciate you all for being here, taking out your time to join us this evening. I want to go ahead and give 2 quick acknowledgments. I want to acknowledge our, I don't know why I am blanking on your title. We have County Supervisor Patty Logsden. If you could stand and wave and let everybody know who you are. Thank you. And why am I blanking on your title? What is your title, Israel? I don't forget about you. Register of Deeds. Yes, thank you. I definitely forgot his title right now, but I would never forget about you, Israel. We truly appreciate what you do for Milwaukee County. So we're going to get started right now. So as many of you know, I'm going to talk about where we've gotten started, where we are right now, and where we're going. And so as many of you know, in 2019, Milwaukee County became the first jurisdiction to recognize racism as a public health crisis. And since then, we have seen 200 communities locally and different states actually take on that mantle at the same time. And so when we think about government and population health, in the midst of working on our mission and vision, we started to focus on our first strategic plan in over 20 years. And we started off with our mission statement, which is we enhance the quality of life in Milwaukee County through great public service. And so after looking at that, we started to dig a little bit deeper as it relates to the quality of life and the overall health for Milwaukee County. And how do we take it, how do we look at it from a positive light versus looking at the negative aspects of health? And so we had to ask ourselves, how is Milwaukee County's health? And the short answer to that is it's not good. We've been second to last as being the healthiest county in the state of Wisconsin. And when we look at many of our issues, we look at the health disparities, we look at the racial disparities, and we know that we have to do more in getting things aligned and making sure we are the healthiest county in the state. And, you know, when you think about health disparities, just in general, when we think about life expectancy, for example, white people in Milwaukee County live 14 years longer than a black person. And this should be appalling to all of us that that type of statistic is based off our skin color. So we know that we have to do something because that is totally unacceptable. And when we think about the different disparities that we see in Milwaukee County, this isn't something that happened overnight or by accident. And so we know that there's been policies in place. When you think about like redlining, for example, that government put in place that really set those types of wheels in motion. And so we understand that most people have not acknowledged that look at how to look at race or gender or ability status as it relates to how these disparities are coming about. And so for us, we wanted to really embrace our pro-equity approach. And so we wanted to do that so we can meet everyone's needs all throughout Milwaukee County, no matter where you come from, what zip code you live in, what color you are, so on and so forth. So what we have done is we focused on our strategic focus areas, and we have 3 strategic focus areas. The first one is intentional inclusion, and this is just making sure that those who are affected most by the policies that we put forth are at the table, making sure that our government is reflective. The diversity of the people that we represent is reflective in government as well. The second strategic focus is really bridging the gap. How do we bridge the gap, particularly in health disparities and racial disparities all throughout Milwaukee County? And when you think about that, a lot of that stems from the fact that we have either been at the top or near the top of the list when it comes down to being one of the most segregated communities in the country. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing resolving many of these disparities by really addressing the individual needs of folks, but also whole families as well, whole individuals and whole families. And then the final strategic focus area is really about investing in equity, putting our money where our mouth is. And so when we think about intentional inclusion, what we have done, as you'll see on this slide, is that our cabinet level is reflective of the community. Half of the administration cabinet level is our women, more than half are African American. But when you think about the boards, the commissions, all those different things, we have made sure to make sure that the diversity of this community is reflective of all of those different things. On this next slide, you're going to see that we actually created the Office on Equity as well to really better align all of our departments on a particular scope and provide focus, particularly to this strategic plan. So this is the making sure that everyone is aligned and rowing in the same direction. But we've also implemented the no wrong door model customer of care. And this is to make sure that there's easier access to the different types of services and programs that we offer to many of our Milwaukee County residents. We've also integrated our Department of Veteran Services and our Division on Aging into the Department of Health and Human Services. And this was really to elevate many of the needs that those two programs and the people who are in those programs have. And so it makes sure that we have a seamless handoff, you know. So if just because you're aging doesn't mean you don't need disability services or that you don't need mental health services or you don't need housing services. So we want to make sure that everybody has access, and no matter what door you come through Milwaukee County, you're being served. But we've also did everything that we could to maximize our COVID-19 dollars and making sure that we got the COVID-19 out to many different vulnerable residents. And we even stood up our own public vaccination clinic at the Kosciuszko Community Center. We've also created a special grants and projects office, special projects and grants office. And this was really about making sure that we no longer leave money on the table. How do we research foundational dollars? How do we research federal and state dollars to bring them back into the fold to make sure that we're maximizing our efficiency? But more importantly, you just can't find money like that. And so we wanted to make sure that we're aligning all of our different departments together to figure out how we can bring more resources within Milwaukee County. But we've also invested more than $47 million of CARES Act money to keep people within their homes. We created the eviction prevention program, as well as a mortgage assistance program in the middle of this pandemic, and really helped over 11,000 families stay within their homes, 11,000 individuals stay within their homes, which is a great thing for us. But we also use those ARPA dollars, working with the Milwaukee County Board, to create a right to counsel program to help individuals who are facing eviction to make sure that they are being represented. But while we continue to work on housing, it is great for us to be able to note that just last year, Milwaukee County was that last year? It was probably this year. We accomplished having the lowest unsheltered homeless population per capita in the country. And I would tell you that that's something that we should celebrate. But it's a lot more that we need to do as it relates to housing, making sure that we're giving every individual who is homeless somewhere to stay. But I think many of you can look at the housing market and say that it's no longer affordable in many different cases. And so how do we make sure that individuals have access to affordable home ownership or affordable renting space? But we also just broke ground on the East-West BRT, which is going to be a 9-mile regional modern transit service to get folks from downtown Milwaukee that will go all the way to Wauwatosa, where the Milwaukee Regional Medical Complex is located. So we're really excited about that. And we just didn't break ground. We just had our open house with our mental health emergency center, which is a part of our behavioral health services redesign. We're really excited about that. We not only had many of the folks who work for Milwaukee County, but we had individuals who rely on those services. Many of our partners to come to the table to figure out what this looks like and have a very unique partnership with all 4 healthcare systems in Milwaukee County. And so we're looking for this to be a model for everybody to look at to see how we actually deliver mental health services. And I have to give a quick plug and thank the Milwaukee Mental Health Task Force for being a part of this from the very beginning. But after a rough start this year, I think everybody has seen the news and seen the amount of violence that we have seen throughout this whole country. So we invested $6 million of our ARPA funds to really address that community violence and really give county departments the tools that they need to really make a measurable positive effect and change in the communities that we serve. But as it relates to that, I understand that there's stigma around mental health, and I felt that it was needed for us to start a community health and healing series where we actually went out and talked to individuals all throughout Milwaukee County, one, to try to end the stigma of that barrier as we talk about mental health, because there is a stigma around mental health. But more importantly, when people are in a mental health crisis, they need to make sure they have access to services. So we wanted to bring services directly to them because it's important folks understand what we provide as Milwaukee County. We also established a paid parental leave program, and this was really to give many of our county employees the flexibility that they need to care for a child or to grieve for the loss of a child. And I think that's extremely important. But it's also a good thing when you think about the labor markets that we're currently in. We have to find ways to bring in more workers. And raising wages is not one of the things that we're able to do so much within the county, but how do we give that care to get more people inside? But we also upgraded our employee compensation package to really meet the needs of this economy and this job market. And we were able to do that based off of our vacancy and turnover. We have about a 20% vacancy rate across all the different departments. And with those empty positions, we were able to actually give raises to many of the individuals who have been on the front lines for the past 2.5 years working within this pandemic. And honestly, that was to keep people there, to keep people within Milwaukee County, because we want to make sure that we continue to have change makers right here within Milwaukee County. And because we are talking about hiring, I want to let folks know that we are hiring. So if you are looking for employment or you know someone looking for employment, we are literally hiring from A to Z, from the airport to the zoo. So please visit jobs.milwaukeecounty.org if you know anyone who's interested in being a change maker and in helping to improve the lives of everyone throughout Milwaukee County. And so I'm going to talk about where we're going. And so when we think about housing, we have a lot to do when it comes down to housing, as I explained. It's just no longer affordable. So we actually invested about $18 million into having into affordable housing in Milwaukee suburbs. And so this is to help buy down some of the inflationary prices in some of the affordable housing, or even the market rate housing, so the rents could be affordable for individuals that are looking for a place to live. But we're doing things in mental health and substance abuse as well. We've seen how the opioid epidemic has gotten out of hand, and we're going to be receiving $71 million through a historic opioid settlement that we're going to get over the years. And so we're looking to invest that as well, invest that into education, treatment, and different abatement services. But we're looking at transportation. And honestly, transportation is a vital need in this community. So we want to continue to improve transportation, but we're going to need everybody's help to really have a conversation as it relates to what we do moving forward, and we'll get into that a little later. But the other thing that's really important to me, at the very least, is sustainability in government, the fiscal sustainability of what we do. And Dr. Dan from the Budget Office will get into it, but we really need the state to really step up and help out as it relates to resources. And I have a call to action. I know that many of you are going to be talking to me and letting me know your concerns of what we need to do with the budget. But I have a question for you all and a call to action for you all to help us get to the place and help us reach our goals as a county. We also have a strategy dashboard, and this is important for me because I believe in transparency. I always talk about HOT, okay? HOT, honest, open, transparency. Something that you don't necessarily get in government too much. And so it's important for me for you all to know about the strategy dashboards that we have been putting online. And this is really to be transparent. We did this first with the COVID-19 dashboard, and we got national recognition. And so we decided that we needed to continue to put out more data. And so we now have data out there related to our workforce, data out there related to opioids. So not only internally we know what's going on, but you as the public know what's going on, our partners know what's going on, so we can deploy different types of strategies and really work together in moving a county government forward so it works for everyone. But what's also important is collaboration. And I can tell you that Milwaukee County has been dedicated to collaborating with many different local municipalities. We've collaborated with Oak Creek and your mayor, with Mayor Bukewicz. We've been collaborating with many different municipalities, business leaders, foundations, all of our external partners to figure out how we can move forward. And this is key when we think about these dashboards. When we talk about how we bring everybody to the table, focusing on strategies, it's not just about collaboration, but the dashboards help us to coordinate just a little bit better because we all have access to the same level of data. So if you're interested in learning more about our strategy dashboards, I highly encourage you to visit county.milwaukee.gov/vision, or you can just simply Google Milwaukee County Strategy Dashboard. With that being said, I want to bring Dan to give you an overview of the budget. I will come back up with the call to action, and then we will take your questions and I will listen. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. County Executive, for that overview here. My name is Dan Lorla from the Office of Strategy, Budget, and Performance. I'm here to give an overview of the 2023 budget for Milwaukee County. So as the County Executive mentioned, these are the 3 strategic pillars that the county is aiming towards, and this is really forming the basis for our 2023 budget. We asked every department to submit their budget with these things in mind when they're deciding how to allocate those scarce resources that they have. So this would be the intentional inclusion, bridging the gap, and investing in equity. And these are the same things that the County Executive is taking into account when he's considering the budget for October. Next, we have a chart here that shows the contents of the 2022 adopted budget. You can see this on the slides here, and also there's a couple of charts on the side of the screen. You can see that the largest portion of the county budget is health and human services, and the next largest is transportation along with public safety. And the rest of the county services are the smaller slices on the right there. One thing that you will note is that almost all those services you see there are mandated by the state. Items like the courts, mental health services, corrections are things that the county is required to provide. The slices that are things that are not mandated by the state and things that the county has the option to choose to fund or not are very limited. And those are the things that are the quality of life services that are quite popular also, including transit and parks. On our next slide, we can see the operating revenues for how these are funded. The biggest chunk here is the program revenue from services. So these are the users of the service providing the funding for what they use. The next largest is the property tax, then it's followed by sales tax. And the bottom right there, we can see the state and federal reimbursement, which is also a very large portion. All right, so for our 2023 budget outlook, the first thing we have to talk about is always the county's structural deficit. Essentially, our expenditures are increasing at a faster rate than our revenues are. And because of that, every year we need to make decisions on what to remove from the budget or what revenues to raise in order to make the math work. So on average, we've been seeing about a 1% increase in revenue each year with about a 2.5% increase. And I want to note these are average numbers, so they don't take into account some of the recent things we've been seeing with our decrease in revenue and also the inflation we've been seeing recently, which is significantly higher than 2.5%. When those numbers come together, we have an operating budget gap of about $12.6 million for 2023. So this means that we will have to do a combination of $12.6 million of expenditure reductions and revenue increases to meet the statutory requirement for a balanced budget. As I mentioned before, the cost of state mandates is a large portion of this. One of the issues we're seeing is that we have an increased cost for the youth census in the Department of Health and Human Services, which is largely out of our control, and that is a cost that we are required by state law to fund. As the county executive mentioned, we're also seeing about a 20% vacancy rate across the county, which is providing a severe strain on the services we provide. Also noting that the vacancy rate for certain classifications of employees is significantly higher. For example, correctional officers, where we're seeing much higher rates of vacancy. In terms of the county's capital budget, the requests for capital funding exceed the available funding by about $84 million. So when we see capital project requests come in across the county, we see a significantly higher list of needs than we have funding for. Federal recovery funds, the county executive mentioned the Arpa funds and some of the county strategy on it. We'll talk more about that a little bit later, but with the note that those funds should be used just for one-time purposes, so it's not a best practice to use them to fill gaps in operating budgets. So as a summary there, we need to maintain sustainable solutions in order to achieve our budget gap success, and the one-time items are really not going to provide long-term success for us. All right, so on to the next slide. So we've seen that with our existing revenues, it's a significant challenge for the county to meet its needs. So what other options are available for revenues? So property tax is the first one listed. Wisconsin is already very high on property taxes, and we are already at the maximum level of taxes allowed by the state government. So this would require some change in state law for this to go up. And also the magnitude of property tax is not particularly high. It would require an increase of about 60% in property tax to equal a 1% increase in sales tax in terms of the county's revenue. The next is money from the state. We'll see some charts in the next few slides that show that money from the state has largely been flat over the years. When you account for inflation, it's been a real dollar decrease. The vehicle registration fee is a fee that the county levies in order to get funding for the transportation services. It is restricted solely to transportation, so there's a limit to how much this can be raised. And this brings us to the sales tax, which would require a change of state law as well, but a 1% sales tax would provide about $180 million in locally generated revenue on a sustainable basis to help support these county programs. This chart will show the revenues that are being paid from county taxpayers to the state. So we can see from 2010 to 2018, and the data for recent years looks very similar, that the amount that the county taxpayers are paying has gone up significantly and at a pretty steady pace. And then onto the next slide, we can see that the money that's going from the state back to Milwaukee County has remained largely flat or had some decreases. So at the same time the county is providing more money towards the state budget, the state is providing roughly the same to the county. So this chart shows a hypothetical of what it would look like if the state aid to the county had indexed with a 2.5% assumed inflation over the last several years. So the orange line at the top there shows what it would look like with the 2.5% increase compared to the blue is what the actual has been. So this is an $83 million difference that we'd see in our budget. So if the state would have increased their revenue to us by 2.5% every year, we would have $83 million more for services. So what has the county done to deal with these budget gaps over the years? So over the past decade or so, the average budget gap has been somewhere between $30 to $50 million. So the fact that we're at a much smaller dollar amount now shows that we've taken significant action to do our part to reduce expenditures and raise revenue to help maintain a sustainable budget. So some of the examples we have listed here are reducing the county's footprint by 1.6 million square feet. We have some significant space and buildings that we used to use and used to maintain, and given that we've reduced the county's employee count, we've been able to reduce the square footage as well. Restructuring of post-employee benefits. There's been some significant progress in the past decade to contain the cost of benefits to retired employees. Restructuring workers' compensation is another item that's been a pretty quick win to get us some savings. Deferring maintenance, this is a $35 million savings, but it is a bit of a double-edged sword. There's been some very difficult decisions being made about which capital projects to fund and which infrastructure items to fund the repair of and which ones not to. Staff reduction of 1,400 employees. This excludes some items that have been, some functions that have left the county and moved to the state. So when we're looking solely at the functions that the county currently has and also had about 15 years ago, we have about 1,400 fewer employees doing the same work in that time. Salary step freezes. Prior to 2010, the county's compensation system included automatic step increases for employees. That's been frozen since 2010, saving about $55 million over the years. Employee health and pension contribution, another item that previously employees contributed $0. Now there's been some changes to state law, and because of that, we've had about $21 million in revenue due to that. And additionally, the vehicle registration fee, which we discussed earlier, brings in about $17 million and is dedicated to transit and transportation items. So our structural deficit continues to grow despite taking all of those actions over the last decade to drastically reduce the spending and increase the revenue. So like I mentioned before, we used to be in the $30 to $50 million range. The projection from the Office of the Comptroller now shows that we'll be in about the $17 million per year range, which means that every year we need to make $17 million of expenditure reductions or revenue increases just to maintain the same level of service. And then once we do that, we need to do that again the next year for $17 million. So to close the 2023 budget gap, our plan here, the first thing we did is we asked all departments to submit requested budgets with the same amount of tax levy in 2023 as they did in 2022. This means any inflationary increases in their budgets, the cost of services, the cost of goods, they would not get additional funding for. They have to identify reductions in their own budget. And additionally, a portion of the cost of compensation increases, departments would also have to find a way to fund without any additional resources. Some other actions we're considering taking is taking funding out of our debt service reserve. It's a limited funding source, but when we're balancing the services provided and the lack of revenue options, responsible withdrawal from that is an option. Recovery funds, once again, the ARPA funds for one-time items are, we're looking for as many one-time items in the budget as we can to fund with ARPA rather than with the property tax dollars. We're also looking at the healthcare projections to see if there's any availability for savings there and if there's any opportunities for plan design changes. And finally, always looking for other expenditure reductions. I'll also add in any revenue increases that are out there. All right, so moving on to the American Rescue Plan Act, or the Arpa funding. The county executive mentioned quite a bit about this, but I do want to note that the county has received a $183 million allocation of ARPA funds. These are funds that have to be incurred by 2024 related to the COVID response, economic recovery, and also revenue loss during the pandemic. You can't stress enough that these funds are temporary and should be used for non-recurring expenditures. We don't want to be in a spot where we're supplementing our operating budget with ARPA funds, and then all of a sudden in 2025, our $17 million gap turns into a $100 million gap because we don't have that funding anymore. The county's revenue loss provision has been significantly higher than its ARPA allocation. The estimate for the county's revenue loss in the ARPA calculations is roughly $400 million. I also want to note that the County Board of Supervisors created the ARPA Task Force, which has been reviewing the funding options and making recommendations for how we can use our ARPA funds. This next slide shows the county's ARPA Dashboard. This is a real-time dashboard that you can find on the county's website at any time that shows where the money has been spent. You can see right here that the revenue loss provision has been the highest, with community support the next highest. COVID mitigation and fund administration are also some portions of that. And here we have some details on how the funding has been spent. So we can see $22 million on housing programs. This directly ties into some of the successes the county executive mentioned in our housing program, and how some of this funding has come directly from ARPA, gone to the housing programs, and led to good outcomes in the community. You can also see some of the other details here. The county service delivery are some items related to youth justice, mental health, and the courts backlog, and many other items as well. I'm not going to go through each one of these. But some of the larger ones are information technology projects. So these are one-time expenditures that are, the plan is to make the county more efficient and provide cost savings in the long run. And then also $26 million for infrastructure needs. So this ties into what I mentioned earlier about the county making difficult decisions about how much infrastructure to fund in previous years. So in our next steps for the 2023 budget, the town halls are happening this week. And then on October 1st is the statutory deadline for the county executive to release his recommended budget. In October, the county board's finance committee will have hearings to listen to the budget. And then in November, the county board will adopt the final budget. All right, with that, I'll hand it back to the county executive to provide the closing remarks.
Thank you, Dan. Truly appreciate it. And so, one thing I will end with is that we need a sustainable revenue source. We absolutely need a sustainable revenue source. And so that's why you hear us constantly talking about the local option sales tax. And so when you think about the local option sales tax and why we need it, I highly encourage you to visit the website related to Balancing Act, which is the second bullet on here. So if you're interested in learning how to balance the budget, and under the same guidelines that we have to balance the budget, understanding that there are certain things that you just can't cut, we may give you a little bit more leeway than some of our supervisors have, but this gives you an opportunity to see what our supervisor and what our administration has to go through as it relates to balancing the Milwaukee County budget. But we also want you to contact your legislators. We want you to contact your legislators, find who your legislators are, and talk to them about the local option sales tax. And I know many people are probably asking, well, what is this? What is the local option sales tax? And so you can visit moveforwardmke.com. And on that particular website, moveforwardmke.com, we have partnered with the City of Milwaukee. We've partnered with the MMAC, the GMC, and other coalition members, not only just here within Milwaukee County, but also statewide, about the need for more revenue sources. Because we can no longer cut anymore. We have cut, and it's no longer sustainable for us to continue to cut. Even when you compare us to other communities similar to our size, we actually spend less money than they do. And so at the end of the day, we really need these additional revenues to make sure that we can make investments instead of working from a place of disinvestments. So I want to say thank you again. Call up Shanika Fitch so we can get our listening session started. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive Crowley and Dan DeLaura, for your presentations this evening. All right, so at this time, we're going to transition to our public comment portion of the program. Again, I do have a few reminders for you all. In an effort to be respectful of everyone's time and answer all questions, if you register to speak online for a question or a comment, you will receive an email response directly from the county executive. Now, just a reminder of our ground rules for participation in the public comment portion. Each person who signed up to speak this evening will have 2 minutes to make a comment and or ask a question. Speakers will receive reminders with 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then when their time has expired. Milwaukee County reserves the right to mute those who exceed their time. All right, so up first to speak this evening, I have Steve and Nikki Ag. Is that accurate? Steve and Nikki, are you here? All righty. Up next, it looks like I have Valerie Novi. Valerie, are you here and would you like to speak? Okay, thank you. Up next, it looks like I have a John Calitz. John, are you here and would you like to speak? Yes, I will. All righty. One minute.
So thank you so much for that comment, John. I would tell you that, it's one of the reasons why I ran for county executive. When you think about our parks and recreation, I think they're the beating hearts of not just our community, but anyone's community. And I look at our parks as a place for anyone to go when they want to get de-stressed, when you think about people's physical and mental health. I truly believe that. And as a, new owner of I've had him since he was 5 weeks. He's now a 5-month-old pit bull named Cosmo. I truly understand where you're coming from. And, the federal government is basically saying that we can't have this particular dog park there. But I can tell you that the Parks Department is working with the community. And so there is a website. I know Guy Smith knows. I don't know it off the top of my head. But an interactive website that you can visit to help us look at where the next dog park should go. So this is something that is at the top of our mind. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
All right, up next, I have Catherine Myers. Catherine Myers. 1 minute. Thirty minutes. Fifteen seconds.
Thank you. We are. We are going to do what we can to find another dog park not too far from there. But what I would encourage you to do, particularly when you talk about the dollars, because we need your help. And so if you can get the folks who utilize Runway Dog Park the most to contact their legislators and talk about the need for additional resources so we can not just worry about dog parks, but all of our parks, all of our trails, our beaches, the coastal line that we have on Lake Michigan, we need your assistance. So I truly appreciate your comments, but let's get into this together.
All right. Since we've had two people commenting about the dog park, and Guy, could you share, please, what the website is for those? All right. Thank you so much. Up next, I have a Jeremy Herbisol. Jeremy? One minute. Thirty seconds. Fifteen seconds. All right, up next I have Lynn Crawford. Lynn. 1 minute. Thank you.
So I will answer the first, and then I'm gonna assume Dan, the budget guy, would know the latter. So fair share, yes, that is what's morphed into the Move for MKE coalition. And so we've had numerous of models about what do we need to do in order to fill the gap that's there. So people would ask me, well, why don't you just raise property taxes? Or why don't you raise a vehicle registration fee? And my response is, I like my job right now, so I'm not looking to do that. But even if we did that, we would have to raise property taxes almost by 40%. People will say, well, why don't you go after shared revenue, right? And we should be getting our fair share of revenue back, but that's about a 600% increase in shared revenue that we would need to get from the state. And that is one of the reasons why we looked at the 1% sales tax. And what it would do is we would look to basically put a 1% sales tax in place, but a third of that would go directly towards property taxes and buying everybody's property taxes down. And then a third will basically stay within the county, and then a third will go to the city. And then the dollar amount?
And the state aids to the county was about 150 million back. So noting the state does have their own services to provide with part of that money, but that's also a very small proportion going back to the county. And as we saw, it's maintained flat as the county's contribution to the state has increased.
All right, up next I have Amy. Amy, I can't read your last name, sorry. One minute. $30 seconds. Thank you. All right, up next, it looks like I have a Gail. Yes. Okay. One minute. 30 seconds. $15. All right, and so our final person is a Clay Eklund. Clay, are you going to speak this evening? One minute. $30 seconds.
Okay. My last thing is, I know the county has healthcare costs in every municipality. Why isn't every municipality lobbying for universal healthcare? If we get universal healthcare, what would happen to county budget?
15 seconds.
Thank you. Well, I will at least say, Clay, thank you so much for your comments related to the pension. By law, we have to take care of our obligations, and so at the end of the day, we are trying to make sure that that pension is still there. There are so many people who have worked hard for that pension, and so they still deserve that pension. So we are working to preserve it every single day. And what was it you mentioned at the very end? Universal health care. I'm with you. Well, you would have to go to every municipality I think that at the end of the day, one thing that, so I talk about the financial issues that we're facing here at Milwaukee County. Just so folks are aware, this is not unique to Milwaukee County. Every municipality across the state of Wisconsin is facing some type of financial issue right now. It's just a little bit different for us because we are the largest county, so we have a bigger scale a bigger gap that we have to fill. And so at the end of the day, this is why we're asking for partners. We're asking for your help as it relates to literally having conversations with your state legislator. I'm saying that, we have a $13 million gap going into this upcoming budget, right? I mean, the state is sitting on almost, $5-6 billion surplus. And so it's really about how do we make sure that we create partnerships with our state legislators so we can actually get those dollars back and reinvest it back into the community. And that's what we need your help with. So I appreciate your comments.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming out tonight and participating in this opportunity for public input on Milwaukee County's 2023 budget. There are still a few more opportunities for you to participate. Tomorrow there will be a virtual town hall at 11:30 a.m. and you can see it on the screen there. And then the final opportunity will be on Wednesday, August 24th. We will go to Kosciuszko Community Center and that will begin at 5:30. Again, thank you all for coming out tonight and participating in this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we do have, if folks have more questions specific to departments, we do have many of our directors here. And so if you want to get a quick question into one of them before they leave, please, you're more than welcome. Thank you again for being here.